Hei, mitt navn Ann-Karin Iversen fra KS i Buskerud, Vestfold og Telemark. Vi her i dag for å høre litt om hvordan Ontario har utviklet sin barnehage fra å være, som de sier på engelsk, from playing kindergarten to a play-based learning kindergarten. Og vi så heldige å ha Beverley Freedman fra Ontario her i studio, det vil si på KS-kontoret, for å fortelle oss litt om hvordan de har utviklet sin barnehage.
Hi, I'm Bev Freedman, and we're going to have a discussion today about kindergarten and the changes in kindergarten we've experienced in Ontario. I began my teaching career in 1972. I've been a teacher, an administrator, a supervisor of principals, a supervisor of supervisors. I've worked in our Department of Education, our Ministry of Education, and I've worked at the university. And I began my career in upper secondary, but I have become passionately committed to kindergarten and early learning. So in Ontario, we have 4 major goals provincially: to achieve excellence, to make sure that all students will achieve at high levels of performance, to ensure equity, because we know that students do come to school not equal. They come with different backgrounds. Some of them backgrounds of poverty. Some of them come speaking no English or French. We have students with special needs. We have the whole range of students, as does Norway. And how can we achieve equity? We promote well-being, active, healthy living, and making sure that students will be positive mentally and physically and have a sense of self-being and belonging. And we want the Ontario taxpayer, the Ontario public, to have confidence in public education. For us, kindergarten is one of the ways we can achieve all of those 4 aims. So in Ontario, unlike Norway, kindergarten is part of primary education. Schools will be junior kindergarten to grade 6 or grade 8, but the kindergartens are in the elementary schools in Ontario. You are eligible to enter junior kindergarten if you turn 4 before December 31st. That's our arbitrary date. It is voluntary to go to junior and senior kindergarten, fully funded, mandatory for grade 1. And the other thing that's different is that kindergarten has a very separate and direct and targeted curriculum all of its own.
What have been the big changes in kindergartens in Ontario?
So remember, we're interested in academic excellence, ensuring equity, well-being, and public confidence. So we've undergone some substantive changes. The first was that we went from half-day kindergarten to full-day, everyday kindergarten. We went from playing, and the purpose of kindergarten largely was socialization, to a very specific intentional play-based learning with learning outcomes, grounded on the research of Marie Clay, of Maria Montessori, Reggio Emilio. Everything is age appropriate, and our kindergarten ratio, we have both trained teachers, certified Ontario teachers, as well as specialists in early childhood education. If you came to our kindergartens, you'd see lots of intentional learning spaces, materials for students to explore and grow. Students begin to make connection, self to self, self to family, self to the community, and self to world. Often we're using inquiry. We ask students to think about questions they'd like to explore and then have them unpack it. And this would run through the mathematics curriculum, the literacy curriculum involving reading, writing, and oral language, or the science or social studies curriculum, all focused on kindergarten students. Because we have so many immigrants to Canada, we're very focused on language, and we look at the language of students who come from cultures of family. Not necessarily whose students grow up in a family that is lacking money, but in cultures where poverty has been the reality for multiple generations. And we know we have to build vocabulary. And so our kindergartens are language rich, both in spoken and in written language, all across the room, and we co-construct learning with the students. We initially had kindergartens that were pretty full of teacher-bought materials. Norwegians might find that our kindergartens are now messy, full of materials that students have created and take ownership for. And so I've been in kindergarten classes where every month the students select their best work and they can take you over to the portfolio and explain to you why the work looks different and how they've improved. So we've given them the language to develop ownership for their own learning. We're also building tools for learning, resources, as well as making sure students promote well-being. They have opportunities for active play. They're working on positive social behaviors. We're building classroom leadership. All of those things are happening. And in terms of the equity, the other piece we're looking at is readiness to learn. So a measure called the Early Development Instrument, or EDI, was developed in Ontario by Dr. Dan Offred and Dr. Janice of the Oxford Centre for Child Studies at McMaster University, and we'll include the link for you. It's a checklist that's completed by senior kindergarten teachers to look at, can I do that again? Yeah, okay. So one of the instruments that we use is the Early Development Instrument, or EDI, and it measures readiness to learn. It was developed by Dr. Offred and Dr. Janice of the Oxford Centre for Child Studies at McMaster University in Ontario. It's a 104-item checklist that's completed by senior kindergarten teachers for each child in their class. And it measures readiness to learn to move from kindergarten to grade 1 in a variety of different ways. So it measures academic, literacy, connections to the world, physical, socialization. So there are multiple index. And when it's done, we look at it in terms of that child and what do we have to now do differently with that child, with that class, the school, but we also gather the provincial data, and it's an indicator for us about what are the targeted interventions we need. All day, every day, intentional play-based learning was phased in over time. We tried to start with the most high needs areas for the students where our indicators from readiness to learn were that they needed the most support to level the playing field. The American research is that when children of poverty enter kindergarten, they've heard 50 million less words. So we can't alter what goes on at home. We can only control what goes on in school, and we know we have to make those environments more intentional, richer, because we're constantly closing gaps and maintaining excellence. It's now fully implemented, and we are now beginning to say, okay.
What have been the successes, Beverley?
So what we knew is that by making sure that students in kindergarten are given a strong base to learn, to read, write, do mathematics, think proportionally, spatially, be socially healthy, work on mental health issues, physically healthy, we've been able to track gains from kindergarten through our assessments in grades 3, 6, 9, and 10, because we're now tracking cohorts. And the results are that a decade ago, 54% of our students in grade 3 met very high standards in literacy and numeracy, and now it's 71%. In 2003, 68% of our students graduated high school in 5 years. That's all students, immigrant students, students with special needs. We're now close to 84, 85%, and we think that we can still do better. That means there's an additional 138,000 students graduating high school in Ontario because of focusing young, intentionally, and maintaining that focus all the way through. So that our belief is that with enough targeted, intentional learning, supports for students in kindergarten, making learning inquiry-based, making it developmentally appropriate, making it evidence-based, and drawing on research, that we will be able to have even more students graduate high school and take their place as Ontario citizens, fully functioning in a new digitally linked age. Thank you.